everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
What is happening, Rush Nation? Here we are, week 10, double digits. We're closing in on the end of the fantasy regular season, so time for some very quick startums and situms for week 10. I'm going to go straight through. If you want more detail of this, I will be recording the Fantasy Bible podcast straight after this for part 1 and then part 2 tomorrow. That's where I go through every fantasy relevant player and where I've got them ranked. So let's start with the quarterbacks. My start of the week is easily Brock Purdy. He's up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are the 31st ranked team against quarterbacks. So giving up a lot of points to quarterbacks. Brock Purdy, I went on the Wildcard podcast this week and said he'd finish in the top 4. I've actually got him as my QB3 this week. They get Tampa with their defense at the moment. They're getting absolutely destroyed. Kirk Cousins put up 42 and 36 points against them. Lamar Jackson, 44 points. Even Patrick Mahomes, who hasn't been good this season, for a fantasy football perspective, put up 30 points on them last week. So with Purdy, with McCaffrey back, he is going to be a top 4 play this week. So get straight in there. Other quarterbacks I do like this week, Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, now his weapons are back. And Jared Goff in a shootout, I do think could be a really interesting play this week. I also don't mind Daniel Jones. I think there'll be some rushing upside for him in Germany, so I do like that one. Quarterbacks I'm not so keen on this week. Aaron Rodgers is one, Bo Nix, and Patrick Mahomes. I think for me, Patrick Mahomes is in a really tough situation. I'd be sitting him this week. Moving on to my running back starts here, and I'm definitely up against Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy's playing the Carolina Panthers in Germany. They are the worst team in terms of points allowed to running backs. They're just giving away an absolute ton. 13 running backs this season have scored 12.1 PPR points against the Panthers already this season in just 10 games. 6 have put up 20 points. So Tracy, for me, is going to have RB1 upside this week. But I also like his counterpart, Chuba Hubbard. He got paid today. Big payday. And the Giants they aren't terrible, but they do give up a reasonable amount of points. Jonathan Brooks might come back. In fact, he is expected to come back. But the way that they paid Hubbard, they're sending a signal out here. Hubbard's our guy. He's the one that's going to get paid. He's had at least 17 touches in 7 games this season in a row, and he's also scored at least 15 fantasy points in 5 of those last 7 games. Last week, he's coming off a game with 15 carries, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 catches as well. So for me, Hubbard is a big play. I also really like J.K. Dobbins. He's up against Tennessee. That's a really good matchup. So I'm definitely in on there. But one of the big surprises this season is Chase Brown. He is someone against Baltimore. That Baltimore run defense is not good. Brown has been absolutely brilliant. In week 9, he put up 26.7 PPR points, 27 carries for 120 yards, 5 catches, 37 yards, a touchdown. He's doing absolutely brilliantly right now. I also mentioned on the show with Ian this week that he is getting a huge amount of points per carry, per snap played. So definitely get in on Chase Brown. Some sleepers this week. I do like Ramondre Stevenson. I think he could be a really interesting play, as is Ray Davis, who caught that big touchdown. I also wouldn't entirely give up on Jordan Mason. I do think that there will be some work here, but it will depend on Mason's shoulders. One to keep an eye on. Running backs I'm sitting this week. There really aren't that many, but definitely Javonte Williams against Kansas City. Kansas City are giving up the least amount of points, fantasy points to running backs. So that's a big sit for me. I'm sitting Rashad White. I think Bucky Irving will get a bit more work this week. I'm also seeing Tank Bigsby, this Travis Etienne sort of backwards and forwards. They kind of nullify each other. And Raheem Mostert, whilst he is looking good and better, it's just not necessarily the right spot. Another one I'm definitely going to sort of keep an eye on is Rico Dowdle up against Philly, 4th worst or the 4th best defense in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs, or the least amount, but also the game script is going to be completely against him. So I'm a bit unsure on Rico Dowdle's value this week. Wide receivers, I think, could have a really big week this week. George Pickens, Brian Thomas, I've got them both on the fringes of the wide receiver one conversation. Minnesota, despite how good that defense has been, they will get up in this game. They are 31st allowed to fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So, they are giving up a lot of points. Definitely want to keep an eye on Brian Thomas, especially with the lack of targets there. And they will need to throw the ball because they'll be in the shootout. George Pickens, I really like his options this week with Russell Wilson throwing the football. I'm also a really big fan of Darnell Mooney this week. I think he has got definitely the best matchup on the board from a wide receiver cornerback perspective. I've got wide receiver one upside for him this week, as I do Josh Downs. Josh Downs up against Buffalo. They'll be trailing in this game. They'll need to get the ball downfield, and they'll need to make big plays. And it's not going to Michael Pittman. It's going to Josh Downs. So he's one I definitely want to play this week. Players to be keeping an eye on from a sort of sleeper perspective. Xavier Legette actually has the best wide receiver cornerback matchup of anybody this week. I wrote that up in my column on Fantasy Pros. Do go and check that one out. I also like Quentin Johnston to return another big week in a big way. I've got him in the wide receiver 2 conversation. Juwan Jennings is another one against this Tampa defense. Keep an eye on the injury status. That's one to keep an eye on as well. Wide receivers to sit this week. DeAndre Hopkins, terrible matchup against Denver, and Patrick Surtain. Not one I want to get involved in. I actually sit Jalen Waddle. He's not scored more than 45 yards or more than 45 yards in any games this season outside of week 1. And also Michael Pittman. He's just not getting targeted. He's not getting the ball, and he's not in a good coverage matchup either. So there's some ones I'd definitely be sitting. Moving on to tight ends, Cade Otton for me continues to rise up and as the most reliable target in that offense right now. He is someone that I would be definitely starting. Mike Gesicki returned in a really big way. Tight end 1 finish last week, which was a surprise, but with no Eric Hall and a lacking now, I think for me, Mike Gesicki carries top 5 tight end upside for the rest of the season. So definitely keep an eye on him and add him. Hunter Henry is another one. We chase touchdowns. This might be a good matchup for him to be chasing a touchdown in this one. Tight ends I'm potentially sitting this week. Dalton Kincaid, hard to sit, but one to definitely I'm a bit wary of. Jake Ferguson, potentially, Pat Freiermuth, and Dalton Schultz, I think, are all slightly arrow downs, although they're kind of on the fringes of tight end 1 for me. If you've got other options, then obviously you start them. If you don't, then you obviously have to. Sam Laporta is one I'm really concerned about. I actually think he falls way, way, way down as well. DSTs, I like the Eagles this week. I think they're a really good play this week. And if you've been riding the Saints train the last few weeks, now's the time to get off it. They've got Atlanta, so do get out of there. And if you're looking for some help with streaming kickers, and I really like Chris Boswell this week. I also like Jason Sanders. You can also potentially start Chad Ryan if he's out there, but you want to get out of Will Lutz, and you want to get out of a few of these other Brandon Aubrey's one that is on the fringes of that conversation. I think you start him given what he is, but it's going to be a really tough one for him because I really don't expect them to score too many points this week against Philadelphia. That's going to do it for the start and sit-ins. I hope you have found this entirely useful and really enjoyable. I find that a lot of people are watching this show perhaps more than the others, I think, because of the speed and how quickly I go through it. But I do strongly urge you to check out our Fantasy Bible, because I'm going to talk about all these players and I'm going to talk about every player. I split it into 2 parts to try and keep it to around about 30 minutes, and that's not always possible, and I do like to talk, as you've probably gathered, but I really would like to see more people listen to those shows. There's a lot of work and prep that goes into those. You get all of my fantasy rankings. You get to hear of every single player I rank, so please do give out a look for that one. But until then, Rush Nation, hope you check those out. Enjoy the rest of the week. Good luck for week 10, and don't forget, as always, keep rushing.